Hello and welcome to another episode of Stan the History Man. I'm your host, Dr. Stanley Sandler. Today I thought I'd talk about something that has uh, echoing in our condition today, and that is the question of arms to Ukraine. How we're all, of course, already sending arms there, but it's been a question of how much arms to send, and should we send air power, and do we have enough equipment to give to another country? It's not a really burning question, but I thought it got me thinking about a time when we did give munitions to another country a long time ago, and that was through Mexico. Now, Mexico was in chaos in the period I'm dealing with. Now, this would be the 1840s, 1850s, various warlords taking over and so on. And in the meantime, the Mexican government began to write all kinds of debt. And the one place they were able to get money would be in their customs houses, because as European American ships would go into Mexico with their cargo, they would be charged a tariff, which is every country does that, and but Mexico was not paying its debts, and a number of foreign capitalists loaned Mexico money on the assumption, obviously, they get it back with interest. And it happens all the time. There's nothing wicked or in this way, but Mexico, just as countries had done at that time, certainly throughout the 18th century, well, it's the 19th century, just repudiated their debts, said, well, we can't pay them, or they were forced on us, or you bribed us to take it, something like that. They use some kind of excuses. And actually, some American states in the South repudiated their debts also, which really hurt American credit. Well, the European countries got together: Britain, France, Spain, Prussia, maybe England. I said England, And well, what are we going to do about this? So the British and the French said, we're going to take the customs houses. We're not going to invade Mexico. We're just going to take the customs houses along the coast. And as ships keep coming in, business is still going on. We will collect the money. That's the only way to get any money out of Mexico, is take over the customs houses. So they did that. And Britain felt that it had gotten enough out of this, and it was kind of expensive maintaining customs houses, that sort of thing. That was kind of security there and so on. So they pulled out. They figured they got enough money back to keep the city of London, which of course means the financial center of the British Empire, keep them happy. But the French stayed on, and the reason being because the French under Napoleon III, he was a nephew of Napoleon I, and he really wasn't made of the same stuff as as his uncle. In fact, Marx, referring to Napoleon, said the third said that history is first as tragedy, Napoleon I, and then as farce, Napoleon III. But Napoleon III had great ideas about being another empire and establishing an empire. He did it in North Africa, and he figured maybe I can do it in Mexico also. He also, by the way, cleaned up Mexico, or I'm sorry, Paris, the great boulevards and so on, the Champs-Élysées, whatever. These are all from Napoleon III's time. And also, these wide, broad boulevards, by the way, are very good, makes it easier for troops to control mobs, because France had a lot of mobs, a lot of revolution and so on. So you just, a couple of pieces of cannon on one end of the thing is blow. And Napoleon I did that. That's how he came into power. But it was more difficult in crooked, narrow streets. So let's make a lot of wide, tree-lined boulevards like the Champs-Élysées. Well, so Napoleon had designs upon Mexico, and so he moved in gradually with French troops into Mexico itself. And along the way, this is an indication of the condition of Mexico at the time. A number of more conservative, like Mexican landlords, that were tired of the chaos that had been going on with the previous government under Benito Juarez, who was a great patriot, but apparently just couldn't control Mexico, and also a number of indigenous peoples, various tribes in Mexico, also adhered to the French cause. Now, what's the United States going to do about this? I mean, Mexico's on our border, and we really couldn't do anything because by the time this was happening, we were in our Civil War. We had a number of other, things on our plate. So the American government protested this, a violation of the Monroe Agreement, and I'm sorry, the Monroe Doctrine. To which the Europeans said, "Well, what is this, an international treaty or what? This is a doctrine you unilaterally proclaimed," which said that we're not going to mess with the colonies that are there, but no new colonies. And it looks like very much like Emperor Napoleon III was going to establish a colony in Mexico. So civil war broke out, and this is nothing unusual at the time to Mexico. But the French forces pretty well prevailed because they had more discipline and equipment and so on, European army. But they never really conquered Mexico yet. The Americans, every now and then, our diplomat in Mexico City would give a démarche as a statement to the uh, French authority to get the Mexicans, to get the French out of here. So anyway, nothing much was done. Although we did uh, hide caches of arms on the other side of the Rio Grande River, and the Mexican patriots, you could call them, would find them and use them against the French. But still, it's pretty small stuff. We were involved in the war. But when the war is over, 1865, then the Johnson government massed troops. The U.S. Army had not been demobilized yet, but in large part, mass troops on the border, tens of thousands of troops on the border, also then freely, openly shipped equipment across the border, artillery pieces, shells, rifles, all kinds of equipment. By this time, we've been mobilized for war for 4 years, and gradually the Patriot forces, those who under Juarez prevailed with their new equipment against the French. And always remember, it's not just the French; it's the indigenous people as well as a segment of the Mexican population that kind of liked the order that the French were restoring in the parts of Mexico that they had taken. In the end, however, I think the battle commemorated the Cinco de Mayo. That's where the French forces were defeated by the indigenous forces, and the Emperor Maximilian was captured. See, he had already crowned himself Emperor of France, now Emperor of the whole French Empire, and they caught him. And now, what are they going to do with him? Well, they were ready to execute him, and the crowned heads of Europe, many of them, is kind of like a trade union of crowned people of monarchs. It's still that kind of like that. British, the French, the Prussians were all saying, "Don't execute Maximilian. Just he's lost this part of his empire, and well, that was his empire, Mexico. He's lost that. Just ship him out." And the Mexican under Juarez personally signed his death warrant, and he was shot. I think 1867. So that ended France's Mexican empire adventure in Mexico. Now, of course, you could say, well, I never heard about this. Aren't the Mexicans grateful? Well, you could say, yeah, but after all, we had filched about a third of their territory in the Mexican War, the Mexican-American War 20 years before that, which you talk about an unjust war. I think that's one we engineered deliberately to expand the slaveholding areas in this country. There's not an awful lot of good you can say about the Mexican War. But of course, it made the United States go from coast to coast. But still, so the Mexicans it's not feeling too happy about that. But it is true. The United States did not intervene, no boots on the ground, just sort of the Ukrainian situation, a lot of equipment and so on. And that finally was successful in the end. And I kind of hope we're that successful in the Ukraine in our own times. Well, thank you for listening. This is another episode of Stan the History Man. I'm your host, Dr. Stanley Sandler, hoping you'll tune in again. Thank you.